The November 19th meeting of the Transportation Advisory Committee come to order, please. Do the roll call, please.
Yep, Mr. Anderson.
Here.
Mr. Atkinson.
Here.
Mr. LaSalle.
Here.
Mr. Simmons.
Here.
Mr. McEnroth.
Here.
Mr. Jessic.
Here.
Mr. Tong.
Here.
Mr. West.
Here. Next item is the approval of the minutes of the last meeting. Is there any changes anybody wants to make? Is there anybody willing to make a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It passes unanimously. An agenda analysis. Does anybody want to move any of the items around or have any discomfort or anything about the agenda? Vance.
I just want to say, because it happened so recently, I'm just going to say a little bit on the staff report about what occurred at the Singer Stairs on Singer Hill Road last Saturday. So if I can add that to that.
Okay.
Yeah, and if we have time, I wouldn't mind talking a little bit about Beaver Creek, the Beaver Creek Road plan and some of the decisions that the commission's made on that.
We will take it under consideration.
Thank you.
Okay. Citizens comment. We have 3 comment forms. All of them appear to be on the Barlow items, so I'll hold it.
Mine is not.
Yours is not? Okay.
I think
That's
there's
on
only
item.
one.
Which,
Is it?
is it something you want to do now?
Item 4.
You want to take care of it now?
Yeah.
Okay, then Mr. LaSalle says he wants to become a citizen and give a comment.
Henry, I think their other one is also on Holcomb Boulevard as well, which is not on the agenda. Is that right? Yeah.
Hello, my name is Bob LaSalle. I live in Oregon City. My subject tonight is as a representative of the Park Place Neighborhood Association. The steering committee had a meeting last night and agreed that they want to have the subject on the transportation system plan in regard to crosswalks on Holcomb Boulevard moved up in its priority in the TSP. I brought this up twice at the Transportation Advisory Committee meetings so far with no result. On September 17th, I brought it up and gave examples of other streets within the city with similar lengths that have lots of crosswalks and traffic signals, and Ms. Webb was supposed to get back to me regarding this in relation to some safe routes to schools grants that might be available. I never heard back from her. On October 15th, I again brought up the subject, and I was told that Mr. Walker would get back to me about that subject, and I have not heard back from anybody so far. This subject of crosswalks and the desire of the citizens of Park Place, although we're isolated from the rest of the city by Highway 213, doesn't negate the fact that the citizens have a strong desire to increase the safety on Holcomb Boulevard and feel the city should be doing something about it. We've had the support from this committee to move up in priorities the subject of the crosswalks that are already in the TSP. There's 4 of them that are planned for Holcomb Boulevard long in the future. I'm going to be, I put a request in to be on the CIC agenda for their next meeting to address this very same subject and get their support on moving these crosswalks up in their priority. And it looks like I'll probably have to go to the city commission to try to get some action, or at least some answers, something to give us a little bit of encouragement that something can be done. You know, it's always in the future. Well, the future for the citizens of Park Place is now. So, thank you.
Thank you. And you said there was another one that was not on Barlow?
Right, the gentleman in the back, he
Okay.
turned in a comment card for Holcomb as well, I believe.
Bob Barney, lived in Oregon City all my life, up off of Holcomb. And I have a basic problem as far as speed. Cars are ripping past the house. I've got one Corvette that is losing traction going over the top of the hill. He's probably going between 100 and 130, quite often in the summer. They say there's a school zone in there. There is nothing. There's a sign that says school zone ahead. No speed limits, no nothing. People are sailing through there pretty good. And I've already had one car in my yard. I live right below Oak Tree Terrace. I already had one car that rolled in my yard. And what does it take to slow it down? Does it take a fatality? I've called the police numerous times to try and get them out. Kids on mini bikes going straight across Oak Tree Terrace, right into driveways, right at the crest of that hill. I've had people laying on their horns coming up the hill, passing us, and still halfway in the wrong lane, cresting the hill. I've had people pass me on the inside of the corner, going down past the project, and almost took the front end of the car off, cresting the hill going downhill. Well, it's getting ridiculous up there, guys.
Have you had any further conversations with the police department about patrols up there?
Yes, I have. I've called them numerous times. They say, well, we'll get a car out. But when they did bring a car out, he was writing tickets pretty good. But we need to get him out there more often. And the last thing, I'm not opposed to racing. My niece has ran races since she's been 4.5 years old. Race cars belong in racetracks. The last thing that I've seen is coming home from races down in Lebanon, Sunset, all around, is we now have cars drifting up there. When you come off of Holcomb, you come up around that first corner headed up to Park Place. I've seen 3 cars in a line, all drifting around the corners. They drifted around there, went up to, the first time I seen them, drifted onto Apperson. There's no room there for drifting, I'll tell you that. And then the next time I seen them, they were drifting onto Front Avenue, right past the Pink Store. You walk outside at night, 8, 9 o'clock at night, and you can hear them drifting all over the neighborhood. And it's just a matter of time before somebody gets wiped out.
I'm trying to think on my feet here, and I'm thinking
Do
about.
you mind if I
Go
step in?
for it.
So, Bob, since you've not been to a transportation advisory committee meeting
Nope.
before, so.
Nope.
just,
I went to the first neighborhood meeting, last one we had in Park Place, and they said,
Come
come
on
in and
down.
bring it up.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing it up, and I know the committee does too. Transportation safety is what the committee is all about, and we have actually heard from the neighborhood on the concern for or desire for reduced speed limits through the neighborhood. So that package has been assembled and sent on to ODOT, who does the evaluations. We heard this week that ODOT, there's not a huge staff that do speed studies. They're the only ones that can do the speed studies. They were pretty fast with Central Point Road, but what they've told us right now is they won't get to that speed study until spring. So But again, we feel like there's, based on the data that we've seen, that there's a real potential for speed to be reduced along Holcomb Boulevard. And I do, so signage, there is no school zone sign there. I think that I've heard of this remnant sign that says school zone ahead, which I think we need to maybe take a note of and pull down. We've looked at trying to sign that. The school property doesn't actually front that roadway, so it's not necessarily a school zone in regards to, an adjacent school zone. And the problem has been the fact that the only time that the police can really enforce a school zone that's kind of not adjacent to a roadway is when a pedestrian is in a crossing location and a child is in a crossing location, and then at that location, thankfully, nobody uses that crossing location, and they do further up the hill on Holcomb. But that's well outside of what could be considered a school zone.
Yeah,
So,
there are no real crosswalks in that whole area.
Right. So there's nothing within the kind of proximity that if there were a crosswalk, it would pretty much, if you live right in the corner there, do you live on the low side of that?
I live on the low side of Oak Tree Terrace.
And in that kind of, just for lack of a better term, the gully, are you
In the
down
hole.
in the hole there? Yeah. So we would never put a crosswalk in that corner.
Yeah, no, that's
just because that's the wrong
the
place
crest
for
of
it.
that hill would be.
And that's the one place where the, school rights away kind of gets close. It's not really even that. It's public right of way back to the school, which sits quite a ways back off Holcomb.
Right.
So identification of that as a school zone has been problematic. We've looked at it in the past and came to the conclusion that that was not the right place to put a school zone. But the idea of slowing traffic has always been a topic for this committee, and the idea of slower speeds on Holcomb is, I think that's been a kind of a long-standing concern. So I do think there's hope for the reduced speed limit. We aren't the enforcement arm. We can sign it until we're blue, and if folks don't abide by this, we often also reach out to the police department, and then we do have a speed trailer of our own we can place up there, and that's short-term kind of fix. I
That's
think
something that we asked in the meeting, if there was a speed trailer that could be put up there.
Yep, there is. We can put it uphill and
the
down.
the nice thing about the speed trailer is it does collect data, so we can have it out there for a period of a couple weeks. Jason Thornburg, who manages that trailer, he can then retrieve the data from the trailer, and we'd be more than happy to share it with the neighborhood association. Yes, sir.
Where you put the speed trailer is useless. I'm being very frank with you,
Yeah,
but it's right by Steve's Market. What the information you get from that location doesn't do you any good, because it records people slowing down for Steve's Market and coming out from Steve's Market at a slow rate of speed. You need it up in the area where he's talking about, where the higher speeds, anywhere from, I'd say, Swan on up to the top of the hill.
Yep.
Would be the places where you'll really be able to record the true speeders. When I came out of Oak Tree Terrace this evening to come to this meeting, I looked both left and right, and first I looked left and then I looked right, nobody coming, so I started to pull out, and by the time I got about halfway out, there was a car right on top of me coming from my left, coming up Holcomb, so he obviously was going way faster than 40 miles an hour. Anyway, what I meant to say was, you've got to put the trailers in the right spots.
Sure.
Yeah, and I maybe Jason knows this better than I do, but my recollect is there's not a parking strip along the section you're talking about.
There is if you go up around the corner,
Up
on
beyond,
the top side.
up on the top side.
Yeah, and
up
I was gonna-
up by Barlow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was
So-
going to mention, I have seen an increased police presence down towards Swan lately. There have been
Yeah,
patrols
once in
through
a while
there,
they're down there in the parking lot.
but they haven't got up and around the corner where I think
No.
he's mentioning more.
No, where I had, my mom lives further out on Bradley, so I took her home one night. I always turn my turn signal on before I crest that hill, just because I know people fly. The last time that I called the police department, I actually looked in my mirror. The car was clear back at Barlow. I was coming over the hill, had my turn signal on, so the guy doesn't know whether I'm turning on Oak Tree or my driveway, which is the next driveway. Okay, when I looked in my mirror, he was clear back at Barlow. When I crested the hill, he was on my tail and in the other lane, gonna pass me coming over the crest of that hill. So I continue on down, I looked in my mirror, he got back behind me. I started to turn in the driveway, and that's when he passed me between, I'm already in the other lane, headed for my driveway. He passed me between the mailbox and me. And it's a good thing it was a small car.
So, again,
But it's-
I mean,
it's
a lot of what I've heard is
getting stupid.
very reckless driving.
It's getting stupid out there.
I don't, you know, I'm not sure if our speed limit reduction's gonna help. I'm not sure if, you know, additional signage will help. It sounds like a patrol issue, and I think that's the point we need to make with
I
them.
agree.
So, appreciate the comments.
John, can I follow up on this, not being able to post the speed, or have a school speed zone? Because I often drive on Otfield Road out there, and there's two schools, but they're not adjacent Otfield, and there's a signage and signals during the school zone that you're supposed to slow to 20 miles. So clearly, something can be done. I don't think you have to have a school adjacent to implement.
I guess the
signage.
other piece is that, yeah, it would require a flashing zone. It would require, you know, more capital project there than what we have.
I understand, but I
So
think it's.
if we put more of a flashing warning signage, that would then, that could then be identified as a school zone, but
Would that
without
be-
a flasher, it can't.
John, could that be a neighborhood project or a project in conjunction with the school?
Well, I mean, that kind of lends us to some of the question that Bob's asking about, which is capital expenditures out there, which, you know, we've already talked about the crosswalks on Holcomb needing to be something other than just a striped crosswalk because of the speeds and because of the lighting and for a lot of other reasons. If we put crosswalks along Holcomb, we would want those to be something at least in the realm of a rapid flashing, you know, flashing sign, something that the pedestrian pushes a button and that lights up and flashes at you and lets people
Similar to
know
what's at the
you're coming.
library.
Yeah, exactly. And so those are, you know, again, a lot of it depends on how easy the power is to get there, but in the transportation system plan, they're listed as $35,000 a piece. And so
We have electricity in Park Place.
yeah, Bob.
I couldn't resist that one, John.
For a few years, you've had electricity, okay, not that many. Excuse me, ma'am, you need to come up here and talk if you want to talk, but, yeah, so, I mean, they're expensive signs, right? So, and, you know, I get that it feels like the city should just divert whatever plans we had to Holcomb, but, you know, we've got some pretty big projects in the queue right now that we're trying to get through that also have large expenses associated with them. And so for us, it's just managing that scope of work. It's not as easy as just plopping a sign in the ground, right? So the one good thing that I'm seeing out of Malala Avenue, because really my next priority is Barkley Hills Drive in front of the grocery outlet store. We've committed to doing that with the neighborhood there before we heard from the Park Place neighborhood to put a rapid flashing beacon on Malala at Barkley Drive. And the challenge with that is, again, just having the design drawings associated with that and hiring the consultant to do that. And what I really like about the work that we're doing on Malala Avenue, which you may not be familiar with Malala Avenue, but we've got about a mile of Malala Avenue that we're trying to put a lot of bike and pedestrian friendly facilities in there. And that includes 3 rapid flashing beacon crosswalks. and the medians that go along with them. So those are expensive endeavors as well, but what we get out of that is some design drawings that I think we can use as template so that we're not necessarily having to do as much engineering that goes along with them. But any underground facility that includes conduits to connect these facilities or power, conduits to provide power to them, you know, if it has to be underground, we need to think about what's existing and underground. So there's usually some level of engineering work that goes into that. And that all kind of plays into all these crosswalks, or all the costs associated with these crosswalks. So I don't recall off the top of my head. I seem to remember 2. You said there's 4 in the TSP for there. So, you know, that's a significant project. We'd want to do that probably all at once. And the other challenge with Holcomb is we've only got sidewalks on one side, and not everywhere on one side, but all on that kind of north side of Holcomb. And, you know, again, getting the pedestrian landing on the other side, we can take a stab at, you know, placing those in a place that we're not going to have to tear out later when and if we can get a grant to do sidewalks on the other side of the street as well. So it all kind of, I know it feels like kicking the can down the road, but to me, it's really just the reality of we're seeing development happen up there. We're seeing higher speeds. I think we can deal with the higher speeds. You know, the pedestrian activity, I think, will grow as we make it safer up there.
I have what I hope will be a final comment on this, as would be a lower cost item would be being able to install some sort of a camera system up there whereby we could get some visual proof of who it might be and what is going on that we could share with the enforcement people. I know there's issues around that, but the theory being, in my mind, would be public safety outweighs some of those.
Photo radar.
Photo radar, or even a internet camera that's attached, that's being recorded.
I think Henry would be, I mean, if the police, if there's definitely an enforcement issue, maybe police should look into, maybe they have something in their budget to install, speeding camera and start issuing tickets to people.
It sounds like more of an acute problem that he's bringing up, more, not a generalized, everybody's traveling. It sounds like there might be a select few that are reoccurring.
It's, the more houses we put up there,
Okay.
the worse it's getting. Like I say, I've lived within a 5-mile deal my whole life, and that's almost 60 years.
And do we have a liaison that we could reach out to the police department and maybe ask for an enhanced patrol above the school?
He's been asked that at the last general meeting, Sergeant Pagano, and he assured us that he would be talking to the chief, which he did, and there has been an increased presence of the police up there in that upper area.
Yeah, I've noticed.
What I might suggest is, we've all read about the police stings, for example, crosswalks on 12th and Washington, and the one up on Pearl and Molalla. You know, they've had sting operations. Maybe that might be a good site for a sting operation.
Again, I mean, we'll share the message with them, but it's my understanding that police send a officer to every neighborhood meeting. Are they coming to your neighborhood meetings?
Yes, he is. He's a very good officer. He's doing a real good job for us.
Okay, so, you know, it may be resource related for them too. There's only so much patrolling traffic patrols that they can do up there. But
In the interim, as the short-term answer, is Jason able to move the not the photo radar, but the actual radar trailer?
So, yeah, the sign that Bob's talking about is a permanent mounted sign that we rotate through. We have another trailer, so that's why you always see it down there.
Okay.
We have another trailer that I can put anywhere that I have a wide enough shoulder to put it.
As soon as you pass the school, you get probably another 100 yards up from Oak Tree. There's a median
Yeah,
off to the right, would probably be catching people as they're coming around. not writing tickets, but it's at least alerting them to the fact that,
It graphs, one thing it does do is it graphs when everybody comes through. And over time, if you have a 2-week period, you can see when the speeders come through. And I can give that to the police and they can sit there at certain times and they'll probably
make
get
them
their
more
speeder.
effective.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
The other part of it is, not so much right now because of weather, but in the spring and later spring, you do have quite a few parents walking their kids down to that school from Oak Tree Terrace. So those guys, I know in front of my house, there's not much room. In front of the neighbor's house, there's not much room. I don't know how she gets her mail without getting clipped every day. But it's just a matter of time. I'm bringing it up to you guys. Thanks.
Just for information, Craig, when would you like to speak about?
Guess I'm here for any answers.
I think he's on the agenda for the.
Okay, then
speed
we'll
hump.
wait. Okay. All right, new business, just, downtown pedestrians presentation.
I'm Liz Hannum. I'm the new executive director for the Downtown Oregon City Association. Kelly from Community Development.
Would you wait till this noisy thing quits?
Yes, I will.
Please? Thank you.
Yes. So Kelly from Community Development asked me to update you on what we've been doing with our pedestrian counters in the downtown. So I have a presentation that I gave at our National Main Street. It was a 45-minute presentation, so I'm going to kind of go through it pretty quickly. But we worked with essentially the other 2,200 main streets across America to help them understand how to use this tool. And so I thought I would just give the same presentation. So we use a company right now called MotionLoft. And we use it mostly for things like business development and recruitment. So right now that is the, I'm sorry? Oh, yep, okay. Right now that is the primary use of it. So if you're not familiar with the pedestrian counter, it's essentially a heat sensor that we have on 5 buildings in the downtown area that basically 24 hours a day watch people walk by, and it can tell the difference between a person, a pet, a bicycle, and a car. And so we don't pay for the counters for the vehicles. We do pay for the pedestrian counters and the bicycle counters. So that's an upcharge if we wanted to know how many cars were coming through downtown. And it is incredibly accurate. We also have one at the elevator lobby, and we also use a counter, and it's never been more than 3 people off at any given time. So it does a really good job of capturing the people that are coming in and out. So as a business tool, we're using it to tell people the times of day that you get the most foot traffic. We're giving them, for example, Oregon City's Small Business Saturday typically is higher trafficked than Black Friday. So we help people figure out their staffing needs. We also use it as a report for any new businesses that are potentially coming into town. So we're giving them an idea of a daily foot traffic. So for example, in the summer, we get about 1,200 riders a day for the elevator. And in the winter, we get about 800. So we can actually give the exact number, which is really helpful also for our events, and using those trend reports that you'll see here. Kind of goes through the majority of the busiest times of day, peak days, and all of this information is available by month on our website, so that people can actually download the reports for themselves to use. So that's kind of a typical trend report that we, so times of day obviously are important for our businesses to understand, you know, if there's a ton of people on the street at 8 p.m., maybe your store should be open at 8 p.m. So just trying to get people an idea of how the traffic it can affect their business. So I mentioned event attendance numbers. So we often have sponsorship that people want to know how many people they're seeing and what the return on their investment is for our events. And also things like, you know, trick-or-treating this year, we had 3,463 people walk by our office. And so figuring out, you know, maybe it's time to figure out how to close the street so that we're not, you know, it's wall-to-wall kids. And so it's not super safe during high traffic area times of the day. So at this point, you know, our capacity is about 3,000, right, for a 2-hour event. So trying to figure out how to do that. Things like First City, we had our 10th First City on July 13th this year, and we had about 7,200 people walk by. And so we can tell exactly how many people are walking by our office or the other 4 locations. So we also use it for grant metrics. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then it's also about just understanding how people use the traffic patterns. So here's a heat map. So these are actual heat maps from Oregon City. So we can see where people are walking, whether they're walking in the crosswalk, how the cars are using, where they're turning, all of the things. So the top photo is from our office, which is right across the street from Liberty Plaza. So obviously there's a lot of people crossing, not in a crosswalk, directly across, right? And so it's using the data to then understand how we could potentially create safe environments for our pedestrians. That's kind of the end of the presentation. I thought I would give some time for questions and see if you have any need for use. So we've got those 5 counters, and there are much more features on top of what we actually pay for. And then hopefully we'll continue. We have 2.5 years of data right now, so we can look at year over year as well.
Oh, yeah. Hi, I'm the Kelly that was mentioned at the beginning of her presentation. So Kelly Reed, planner with the city, and I'm facilitating the Transportation Demand Management Working Group that Vance is a part of, and Ray is a part of, and Liz is a part of. And we, this working group is trying to make downtown a better environment for all transportation modes, and better manage transportation access and parking in anticipation of the Willamette Falls Riverwalk. So that our downtown, we can build capacity in our downtown so that we can handle the existing foot traffic, vehicle traffic, and the probably additional traffic that will come with the Riverwalk. So we have a working group, and we have a grant of $150,000 for the next 2.5 years. And what we plan to do with that grant funding partially is collect a lot of data so that we kind of know what we're starting with and what's going on downtown. We would continue to measure, track that data over time so that we can, measure our progress, see if we're doing a better job. So part of that data collection effort is these pedestrian counters. so we can use those, so they're very useful for business reasons that Liz mentioned, but then they're also really useful to show us where people are walking downtown, when, what their routes are, and, where we can prioritize our investments in safety improvements. We want to make downtown safer for people walking, because we know downtown is an area where people, if you're driving downtown, and you're visiting multiple places, you're parking once and then you're walking from place to place. You're probably not moving your car 2 blocks and then another block and then 2 more blocks, more than likely. Or, you're parking at the elevator, coming down the elevator, and then spending that time downtown. So we know that downtown's a really important place for pedestrian activity, and we can help to prioritize our investments. We also plan to do some wayfinding signage improvements with some of that grant funding. And so this data would help us kind of know where to put those signs and how to really make that work to the best degree. So thank you. And I just wanted to kind of add how it ties into our transportation demand management plan.
First question is there anything that you desire from this committee?
At the moment, no, we're just letting you know kind of what's going on downtown, and that we are undertaking this data collection effort with that grant funding. We plan to have annual reports of that data, and so we would share that with you through Ray and through Vance. And then we would also, you wrote us a letter of support, I believe, for the grant that we got. We do plan to apply for more funding through that same program. So there's additional funding for actually infrastructure improvements and for marketing, which includes like the wayfinding items. So we do plan on, we'll probably be before you again with an ask at some point in the future.
Is there any questions?
I have one about the heat map you showed. Did the intersection heat map separate pedestrians separate from cars? Like,
you can do that. We just took a screenshot of the whole thing, but you can do definitely, and you can do bicycle traffic, and you can do just pedestrian traffic and just car traffic. You can even just do pet traffic if you really wanted to. It feels a little Big Brother, but because it's just a heat map, it's good for privacy issues, I think. So yeah, you can definitely separate out the maps. Yep.
Thank you.
A question that I'm going to ask, but I know John is going to jump on it, but is it possible for third-party people to acquire, say, vehicle counts off of this?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking about augmenting the traffic counters that the city uses.
Right.
Yeah.
I know when they first got the grant for this, we also submitted a letter of support for that, and the idea was, the data is great for the business focus, but there may be other focuses, just like traffic demand management. So yeah, we can. I mean, if we had a specific project where we wanted traffic numbers, we could reach out.
Yeah. We are kind of limited because they are attached to 5 different buildings, so we're limited to those 5 intersections, and 5 is the minimum that the company suggested for this, and they actually suggest in a downtown of our size, they would suggest going almost up to 10 sensors, and I wish that we had done some on 99 and Main, and then 10th and Main as well. We're missing those intersections. Those are pretty dangerous intersections, and so we now have flags at the buckets with the flags in them. So at least that there's but I wish we had done more of the sensors. Yep.
So it's possible at a future date that something could be negotiated.
Yeah, definitely.
So I see that this data could help on parking studies for after hours. For instance, downtown after 5 o'clock, trying to find a parking space for dinner. is really difficult, but there's lots of parking lots that are reserved for during the hours 8 to 5 that could be open for the general public. So this provides numbers and where people are for that kind of thing, and if indeed the city can go ahead and use that data for parking or to encourage those parking lot owners to open up their lots.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up because we actually, that's one of the pieces of work that the Transportation Demand Management Group is doing. We are starting an after-hours shared parking program. We have 2 property owners downtown who own parking lots that are signing on to get signage that says after-hours public parking and to be part of that program. So after 5 or 6 p.m., whenever they kind of choose when their business closes, then those lots would be kind of advertised as such for the public. City Hall is also going to participate in that. So if you're willing to go use the elevator and you're not going to be out until
9:35.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then you can get back up on the elevator. You can always use the stairs too, but then City Hall parking lot will be advertised that way as well.
I have a question.
Mr. LaSalle?
Is there any margin of error on your traffic count for people that, like I sometimes have to use downtown as a roundabout until I can find a place to park, so I'd go by your sensors maybe twice?
Yeah, so you would be counted twice. So there is not a unique heat sensor for each person. So if somebody walks by and then they walk back, they are counted twice. We can, however, and this is a little Big Brother too, but we can see a unique person walking through our different sensors and then back. Yeah. So we can, they're counted, but there's a additional feature that you can actually see the unique person.
Facial recognition?
It probably. But you can actually, and we don't actually pay for this, but you can actually track their path along and which direction of traffic they're going, and so we don't pay for that feature, but it is an additional thing that we could, if we really wanted to use the data, we could pay for that feature. Yep.
Just to make it clear, it's not activated now.
No, it is not. Yes. Yeah, it's we do not pay for the unique heat sensor. Yeah.
Well, if nothing more, we thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next up is the Pearl Molalla Safety Study. I'm really anxious to hear how this goes.
Thanks, Liz.
Well, good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Lacey Brown. I work with DKS Associates. We're a transportation engineering firm, and the city reached out to us to help them conduct a safety evaluation at the intersection of Molalla and Pearl, which I'm sure you're familiar with. So kind of the overview of what I'm going to present to you, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on the project, kind of the past safety performance, as well as some of the data that we collected at the location. I'm going to go through our field observations. We spent a full day, 12 to 13-ish hours out at the site, observing all sorts of things, and I'm going to show you kind of our key findings from that, and then go through some of our recommended improvements, which are both short-term and long-term, kind of easy fixes and things that might take some more planning and investment. Sorry, I have a frog in my throat tonight, so I'm going to flip it over. So looking at the crash history at this location, we looked at the most recent 5 years of available crash data, which in Oregon right now is 2013 to 2017. That's the most recent data we have through ODOT that we can analyze. During that time period, there was 13 crashes. The vast majority of them were rear end crashes going northbound or downhill on Molalla. There was also one turning crash, one pedestrian-involved crash, and one bicycle-involved crash that involved a turning vehicle. One thing that we looked at was the crash rate. So that's a ratio of the number of crashes that occurred compared to the volume of traffic at this location. And there's kind of some benchmark values that we use called critical crash rates, that if you're above that crash rate, we would, it would kind of flag it as a safety concern just by crash rate alone. And the crash rate here is 0.39, which is below the critical crash rate for this location, or this type of location. More recently, as you are probably aware, there were two crashes at this location, both involving westbound left turn vehicles, one involving a pedestrian who unfortunately passed away as a result of the crash, and another involving a child with their bicycle in the crosswalk. And these two crashes specifically kind of spurred this safety investigation. So another metric we can use is the Safety Priority Index System, which is something that ODOT calculates and reports for the entire roadway system in the whole state. It looks at that crash frequency compared to volume, but it also includes crash severity into that calculation, so it's a little bit more accurate picture of the safety performance. And then they identify locations that are in the top 5, 10, or 15% of all locations across the state. So if you're in that top 5%, that means your safety performance is worse than 95% of the other locations in the state, essentially. So this intersection was a top 10% SPIS site in 2014 and a top 15% SPIS site in 2015, but it was not on the SPIS list for 2016 or 2017. So we also did traffic counts at this intersection, both vehicles and pedestrians. As you can see, your side street, Pearl, is much lower in volume than the major street, as you would expect. One surprising thing to note that I'll talk about in a few minutes is the pedestrian volumes, which are shown on the blue arrows. And even though the two pedestrian-related crashes this year were in the southern crosswalk, the vast majority of pedestrian traffic is actually in the northern crosswalk, as well as the crosswalk on the east side.
We have smarter pedestrians, that's
They learned. So like I said, we did an extensive field observation study. We were out there in early August and looked at all different periods, traffic patterns, pedestrian traffic, lighting conditions. So we were out there during the day as well as at night. Some of the things that we looked at: lane geometry, signal timing, the general operations of the signal and the intersection, sight distance, driver behavior, near misses, which we did see several of, which are like almost crashes. And then we also recorded vehicle speeds as well. So as I mentioned, the majority of pedestrian traffic was in that northern crosswalk, and that's primarily because on the east side of the intersection is the DHS offices, and they actually have an off-site parking lot that they utilize on the west side of the intersection. And so we actually stopped to talk to folks out there to figure out, why are you all walking in this direct path? And it's because all of the state-owned vehicles are in that off-site parking lot on the northwest corner of the intersection, and so that's why there's so much pedestrian traffic there specifically. We did observe several near-miss events, including my boss, who almost got hit while we were out there. He was walking, and it was just a right-turn vehicle that didn't see him, and he had the right-of-way. So definitely not a unique situation to just those few crash events. There seems to be those conflicts on a regular basis there. And a lot of that is related to the skewed geometry of the intersection and the buildings that are directly adjacent to the intersection, very close to the right-of-way, which impacts sight distance. So along the lines of the intersection skew and the skew geometry, as you're approaching the intersection from the east headed west, there's kind of a curvature in the roadway. And what that really does is it aligns drivers to kind of be looking at the northwest corner of the intersection. If you were turning left at that intersection, you would really have to turn your whole body and your whole head to see activity in that southern crosswalk. You're just not aligned very well to be able to see the whole intersection as it's designed right now. Another thing we observed is if you're traveling east through the intersection and you want to turn left and go north on Molalla, you kind of stop in the middle of the intersection and you wait there. People going west have to kind of make an odd jog around you to kind of continue through on Pearl Street. So the geometry kind of introduces a few different conflicts that are unique to this intersection. This is approaching Molalla from the east, and you can see the on-street parking here really obscures your vision and visibility of the intersection, and you really can't see the crosswalk on the north side at all until you're right up on the intersection. We also observed a lot of red light running at this location, particularly on that downhill northbound approach. People were going pretty fast. We collected speeds there. The posted speed is 30 miles an hour, and we did register speeds as high as 40 miles an hour while we were out there. So the 85th percentile was 34 miles an hour, so it's not drastically higher, but they're definitely going faster than the posted speed. There was also some issues with vehicle turn compliance. As you're heading east on Pearl towards the intersection, there is a no right turn on red, and that is there primarily because sight distance is very restricted at this intersection. The kind of pinkish orange building there on the left of this photo is right up against the sidewalk to where you really can't see oncoming traffic if you were to turn right onto Molalla there. Which is why that sign is there. But you can also see in this picture, somebody is clearly in the middle of the intersection on red as they've passed that sign. So
It might be noted that that building is gone as of.
yes, that's what Vance was telling me. That's very exciting. That's great news.
I will say that I didn't know that no right turn on red was there until I saw this picture. And I use that a fair amount of time.
Well, and that's one of our recommendations is to move that sign because people, by the time they stop at the intersection, they're pretty much past that sign. And then they've forgotten that that they ever saw it if they did see it. So
the last thing I'm looking for is that sign.
yes, I know there's a lot going on there. So. Another interesting thing we observed while we were out there, we kind of thought the signal timing was really messed up. We couldn't figure out what was going on during the morning peak hour. And it turns out there are some traffic vehicle detector loops in the pavement. There are these circles here in the pavement that you see, and they are right next to the parking, the on-street parking. So what was happening was, as people were arriving at the DHS building, they were pulling into these parking spots, and then those vehicles would continually trigger the signal for the side street for the next 15, 20 minutes until the signal finally figured out they weren't a real vehicle. So during those 15 to 20 minutes, the side street on Pearl was getting the maximum amount of green time possible because it thought there was a ton of vehicle demand on that approach to the intersection. And I actually have a video. I don't know if it will work. Can you try and click it? Oh, I knew it was going to work.
I like it.
Every computer is different. We can just skip it. Sorry.
That solves everything.
But anyways, it's green. There's nobody there. I know it's completely upside down, but yeah, we sat there for a very long time trying to figure out why this was maxing out. Anyways, while we were out there, the county technician did come out. He adjusted the sensor to make it less sensitive to those vehicles, but it was still observed. So one of our recommendations you'll see is to help address this issue. So it's not necessarily a safety issue, but it is adding unnecessary delay to Molalla. And when people experience more delay, they tend to take riskier behaviors. This is some sun glare. I apologize for the dirty windshield, but it's maybe a really realistic view of what you guys might see if your car is also dirty. So this is approaching the intersection from the east looking west. Not that you can really tell from this picture that's what you're doing, but I promise that it is. And you can tell that you really can't see hardly anything. You can't see the signal indications. You can't really see the crosswalk or any oncoming vehicles. So granted, this only happens once a day, but during those few minutes that it does occur, it does pose a pretty big issue. We also went out there at night and looked at the lighting conditions. In the immediate vicinity of the intersection, the lighting appeared adequate, but the farther away you got, it did get very dark. And part of that is because this intersection is lit by these decorative acorn lights, as we call them, that they're good at illuminating right where the light is, but they don't extend very far. And these lights are in the corners of the intersection. So as you get farther away from them, towards the center of the intersection or beyond the intersection, they don't do a great job of lighting up the area.
It looks like from the picture there that they might not be positioned to throw the light anyway, because it looks like the building obscures some of the light.
Yes, definitely. That's definitely an issue as well. So now to get into the improvements that we recommended, like I said, we have several that are short-term, low cost that we hope can be implemented quickly. There's other that would require some more extensive planning and investment. On each of these slides where we talk about our recommendations, where there's one available, I've shown a crash reduction factor. That is based on national research, the expected reduction in crashes we might see after implementing that specific recommendation. And the values that I show are the ODOT approved values for each of these treatments. So our first recommendation is to implement split phasing on Pearl Street. If you're not familiar with split phasing, so right now, Pearl Street, both approaches, gets the green light and you're yielding to oncoming traffic and you're yielding to left turn traffic opposing you. Split phasing, all of the eastbound movements would go. They'd have no conflicting left turns or through vehicles. Then they would get a red light, and then the opposing direction would get their green light. So it's splitting the two approaches, so you're not having to yield right-of-way to other vehicles. You get all of the right-of-way, and this would just be on Pearl Street, not on Molalla. So it's not the main line, it's just on this side of the street. What that does, like I said, is it removes left-turning vehicle and pedestrian conflicts. So we would give pedestrians their phase to cross when there is no left turn conflict. So when only right turn vehicles would be conflicting with them, not left turning vehicles. And it also removes that conflict between left turning and through vehicles. The crash reduction for this is, it has the potential to eliminate 99% of your left turn crashes, which is pretty significant.
Hey, Lacey, so if you're headed eastbound on Pearl, there's no center turn lane there.
Nope.
So how does that play out? How do you do split phase without a dedicated turn lane?
So all of the movements are going. So basically, you would this approach, all movements just go, right? There's no conflict. So you can turn left, you can go through, you can turn right for a dedicated amount of green time.
I see it.
Then you get the red, and then the opposing approach, all movements can go at the same time.
And when does the pedestrian engage?
So if you were, if this was the westbound through, or your westbound vehicles had the green light, then the crosswalk on the north side would have its pedestrian phase. So it's not going when there's a left turn conflict. It's going when there's a right turn conflict. And I was hoping to have an example intersection for you, but I couldn't find one where you could kind of visualize where else this might be.
Is this just a programming issue, or would
Yes.
signage have to change? Is there actually a left turn green there?
Yeah, so we would need one additional signal head. So one signal head would change.
Okay.
For each approach, sorry.
And then the downside of that is the additional time on the phase.
Correct.
Right? And so efficiency at this location from a driver's perspective goes down.
Correct, and I will show you kind of the impacts of that on vehicle operations as well. Yep. Another thing that we recommended is a leading pedestrian interval, and what this does is it just gets the pedestrians, gives them their right-of-way a few seconds ahead of the vehicle right-of-way. So they're in the crosswalk before any vehicles have a green light. And what that does is it gets them out there, it makes them more visible, but it also kind of reinforces that the pedestrian has the right-of-way, and kind of helps remind drivers that they need to be yielding to the pedestrians.
How does that play out with a red light?
So there'd basically be 4 seconds of all vehicle movements would have a red for 4 seconds. And then there would be a green for whichever phase was
So
next.
if I was running the red light, I'd have 4 seconds to line up. Is that what you're trying to say?
If you want to work the system that way, then that is
Well,
that is
you
your choice.
noted earlier that there was plenty of red light running at that intersection.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm wondering if that would, how that would interplay with allowing the pedestrian out there ahead of the cars.
Yes, that is a consideration, that if people continue to run the red light, then that would be an issue. However, you can sequence the phasing to where that movement, so the downhill movement that is we observed running the red light, that crosswalk maybe doesn't get the red, or doesn't get their pedestrian phase right after that movement. Maybe there's the other side street gets the green first and then it rotates. So there's things you can do signal timing wise to address that issue.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, can I do a quick follow-up? So this 4-second concept for pedestrians, is that a general rule you can apply to most traffic signal intersections?
As far as installing this leading pedestrian interval?
Yeah, that 4-second difference, is that a standard practice that a lot of cities are going to?
Yep, yeah, so anywhere that you have conflicts, particularly with turning vehicles and pedestrians, it's kind of it's one of the low-hanging fruit treatment options that we tend to see happening a lot more often, where you have the signal technology is available to do that. So at this location, there is the right controller for the signal that can allow this to be implemented really easily. It doesn't require any big changes.
So the city may use a similar analysis for other potential intersections around town?
Yep, absolutely. And this specific treatment has the potential to reduce bicycle and pedestrian crashes by 37%. Another signal timing change that we're recommending is adding a protected phase for left turns on Malala. So right now, if you're on Malala and you want to turn left onto Pearl, your only option is a permissive phase, meaning you have to yield to oncoming through traffic. There is adequate capacity right now. It operates well. However, when there is in peak hour, when there's very few gaps, people tend to take riskier movements to get across because they know they don't have a dedicated time to make that movement. So they tend to accept smaller gaps. And because those left turns conflict with pedestrian phases, that is an issue for pedestrian safety. So what we recommended was adding a protected phase. So maybe it's only 3 or 4 seconds, but it's enough to process 1 or 2 vehicles that have a dedicated right-of-way to make that left turn, and then the rest of the time they still have their permissive left turn ability, where if there's not oncoming traffic, they can still make the left turn. So it's not a drastic change. It just gives them a little bit more protected time to make the movement that they need. It does require an additional or a change to the signal head to accommodate that. A lot of the flashing yellow arrows that you might be seeing as we're transitioning to that, that's what those are kind of intended for, is these protected permissive type of signal phasing. And this has the potential to reduce crashes by 16%. So those 3 different treatments, they do have an impact on vehicle operations. They will extend the cycle length and reallocate the green time between vehicles and pedestrians. Existing conditions, like I said, the intersection operates well under capacity. It's level of service A, which is the best you can have. Very minimal delay, less than 10 seconds on average per vehicle. With all of these 3 improvements, you would see an increase in delay. The average delay would go up to 25 seconds in the PM peak hour. but you're still well within city operating standards for both volume to capacity and level of service, which is a goal of level service D, and we would still be at level service C. So we're still operating well above those thresholds. A few more quick hit, kind of easy improvements. Improving the signal visibility. So as I mentioned, with the sun glare as well as the rear end collisions headed downhill, sometimes those can be attributed to people not realizing that the signal has changed. Maybe there's not great visibility of the signal head. So installing the signal visibility, or improving signal visibility by adding reflective backplates to the signals, those yellow stripes. They can either be a whole black backplate that's added to the signal, or you can also use like a reflective tape that gets added to the existing signal head. So they're pretty easy to install. And also supplemental signal heads. So for that sun glare issue, adding some supplemental signal heads either on the far side signal pole on the opposite side of Molalla, or on the near side on the back of the mast arm, would place a signal head indication outside of where the sun glare is. So you'd have a redundant signal indication to help you as you're navigating that intersection. And those two things combined has a reduction potential of 20%. And here's that famous turn sign. We recommend moving the turn sign from the mast arm pole where it is now to the far side, right adjacent to the signal heads. It will make it more visible, especially once a vehicle's already stopped at the stop bar. That sign will still be in front of them.
The reason why the CRF for this is not available is because it has been studied? Is that
correct? Yeah, if it's not available, there's just not enough research on this specific sign or this specific treatment to have a number. We also recommend installing turning vehicles yield to pedestrians for the right turn lane specifically on Pearl Street. It would be especially helpful for the eastbound approach that is conflicting with that southern crosswalk when they're turning right because of the building and the skew of the intersection. It's very hard to see pedestrians in that crosswalk. So this figure here shows both some short-term and some long-term improvements. The short term would be to do some restriping. Basically, what we would do is we would remove 2 parking spots on the east leg of the intersection, and those are the 2 parking spots that are already interfering with the traffic signal operations by triggering the side street movement. And by removing those, we would be able to realign the center line of this roadway ever so slightly and change the curvature so that when vehicles approach the intersection, they're facing the right way so that they have more visibility of the pedestrians that are in the southern crosswalk, as well as oncoming vehicles coming the opposite direction. Making those changes could reduce injury crashes by 48%. It could also reduce other types of crashes that are not injury crashes. There's just not research on that specifically, so that's why that is called out in detail. Long term, what we could do is add a curb extension to the southwest southwest corner, which would let us realign the crosswalk, improve visibility, and also get pedestrians, when they're on the corner wanting to cross, they're away from that building, and they're not obscured by the building and the signal pole and the other things that are in that corner. There's several other additional recommendations that are minor. There's existing fiber optics cable along Molalla Avenue that would be really easy to tie into. The benefit of doing that is that then the county who maintains the signal can remote into the signal, assess operations, make changes to the signal timing. Like when these cars are triggering the signal unnecessarily, they would be able to remedy that immediately without having to send someone out on site. So that's a pretty easy thing and something that's already there. It would just be a matter of tying into it. Also the lighting, as I mentioned, and then that right turn on red, now that we know that building is going away, and that is gone. Oh, it's completely gone. That's awesome. You guys move quick. Now that that's gone and there's not the sight distance issue there, that right turn on red is really specific to pedestrians now. It's not specific to sight distance for traffic, oncoming through traffic. So what we could do is install a dynamic turn restriction sign that is only illuminated when there's a pedestrian present. So when they've hit the push button and they want to cross the street, then that sign would come on and say you can't turn right on red, and help that kind of conflict, reduce that conflict there.
The fiber optic cable, are you talking about the county's cable that they've run up through there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So this is the last slide, just shows kind of the cost estimates for some of these different improvements. As you can see, not surprisingly, the big ticket items are your lighting changes, changing those types of lights, as well as that curb extension, and some of the larger infrastructure projects like that. But the one thing I want to call your attention to is these first two, split phasing Pearl Street and adding the leading pedestrian interval. Those have the potential to reduce your left turn crashes by almost 100%. You're almost completely eliminating those, which is this predominant crash type that led to this study in the first place. And that's for a total cost of $2,200. That is a subsidized cost because the county can do a lot of that with their own staffing. But that's a really huge return on investment from the study. So that's all that I have. I'm welcome any questions.
Would you be recommending removing those two parking places also?
Yes. Which there's not a cost, it's not on here, I don't think.
Open to questions?
Using your stats right here, reducing the injuries by over 100% could also be done another way with less than $1,200 or $2,200, and that is to remove the pedestrian intersection or crosswalk completely on that side. So you could take it out and say, hey, cross on the other side of the street. That would save lives and injuries and all sorts of stuff. So I think that could be something that we'd address on that too.
That is definitely something you could do. It is more political, and that is something that each community addresses differently and is open to differently, so yeah.
Using your stats, there's only 6% of the pedestrians that cross that four corners. Only 6% of them cross on that side of the street. So you're not going to inconvenience a whole bunch of people. You're using the stats that you did on their big study, and I think that that would remove a lot of the injuries and fatalities that just happened on that by not letting people cross on that dangerous intersection.
Yep.
Ray?
One thing about the curb extension, did you evaluate, I know sometimes they do temporary curb extensions with like posts and paint. That's just, type of urbanism where it's very cheap to do that. Would that have the same effectiveness, you think, as a more permanent solution?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
So it's something you could even test out and see if it's being effective and if that's helping or not before you invest in it.
I have a question that I always want to ask about when you do traffic volumes in the summer. How does that change when school's in session?
It depends on the road and the city, and yes, so their traffic volumes probably are higher in the summer, during the school year than they are in the summertime. We did the counts in the summer because this was a time of the essence kind of study, but yes, there are probably higher volumes in non-summertime.
Having used that street a lot, my observation is from about 11 to about 6:30, it's pretty near a solid line of cars.
Gotcha.
If there's anything else?
Well, I wanted to drill into Tim's question because it intrigued me a little bit. That's an interesting approach of elimination of a movement when, from our perspective, kind of hearing all the kind of community input, thinking about what we're doing in the new segment of Malala Avenue. The idea of reducing the options for the pedestrian isn't always a popular place. And so I'm curious, I mean, I just think that's an interesting observation, first of all, the percentages that you were looking at. I agree with you. It's got not, at least under today's development, which even today sounds like it's changing. I went to a neighborhood meeting on Thursday, I think. Somebody was talking about this building being knocked down. I said, I hadn't seen it. It literally went down like Thursday or Friday. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's completely gone.
It's completely gone. But, you know, so that, you know, I don't see the office building where community development used to be changing, nor the parking lot on the other side changing. You know, I do kind of wonder about the old marketplace and now this corner and just, so I don't know. It's just, it's a good point.
John?
But I don't know what others opinions are of that.
The city already has one down here at 6th and High Street, where you go down to the elevator. It's been marked off for 30-some years that you're not supposed to cross on the southbound side of High Street.
But that's not a signalized intersection.
No, that's an unsignalized one.
I mean, the one that I know of is at Beaver Creek and Warner Milne, where that years ago was kind of coned off. So,
it sounds like the south side of that intersection is the problem where the fatality happened, where the bicycle injury happened.
Definitely.
You also mentioned that that's where the direction that the majority of the red light running is going on. So it seems like that's the side of where the most is happening, but the least usage of actual pedestrian traffic. So I think eliminating it might, and then if you maybe did some of the split phasing for the traffic that's turning to the north, you could almost do a two-prong approach and knock out those 2 parking spots and be done with it.
One point on the concept of removing or abandoning that crosswalk. Just thinking about some numbers in my head, because it is marked in thermoplastic all the way across, and there are pedestrian heads, there's still going to be certainly some cost in removing the thermoplastic markings, the pedestrian heads, and paying the county to calibrate and redo their system there. So I'll bet you we'd be probably about the same money, possibly a little more to remove that, believe it or not, than to do, if these estimates are accurate, to do the 2 things that DKS is recommended. Again, I agree with John. It is a very interesting concept. In this case, because these things are already in place, if we're talking money-wise, I think it's a wash.
Vance?
Yes.
Have your sign shop make up 2 signs a little larger than the signal head, those ped heads that say "Do not cross," and put them right in front of the signal so they can't see it.
I believe that this is not a cost issue either, and I think that poor drivers are poor drivers, and they're going to take a left no matter what, because they're in a hurry and they're not looking. But to go ahead and eliminate a crosswalk where there is a known problem, and this is something that there's plenty of people that are taking a quick left right there, and the fatalities and the pedestrian injury to prove it, I think that this is a pretty easy decision to go ahead and take that off, because walking 2 blocks or 2 intersections over, 3 to get over there, I think that's not that big of a hassle for most everybody. In addition, since this is not a high traffic convenience store anymore, well, not that it was ever high traffic, but it's something that you're not going to have that big of an impact on people.
I'd like to add one thing to this discussion. Usually when you remove a pedestrian crossing, that usually says that it's made for cars, and they usually do this in places that are suburban and rural, not in closer to downtown areas, which I consider this as being a more of a mixed-use area. I mean, it has businesses and homes. So in my mind, as someone who bikes and walks through the city, trying to remove a segment for removing pedestrian access to a side of the intersection shows me that, we're valuing cars over pedestrians. That's just my viewpoint on this discussion. So I wanted to bring it up. And also, the second point about the additional infrastructure for this, according to state law, you have to sign off that you're not allowing people to cross there. You have to like put signs in saying no crossing here, because legally you can use crosswalk, even if it's not marked. So you have to actually put in those signs, which I don't know how much they cost, but they're not cheap signs, I don't think. So I just want to add, it is a endeavor to remove it. So.
A question now of staff as, how do you want this committee to proceed? Should we be thinking of recommendations? Do you want to come back with some thoughts after you look at this?
Well, we've had the study for a little while now. The priority, I mean, what I hadn't realized in just kind of my own quick review of this was the success factor of just those top two. I think we were kind of moving more in the direction of taking on several of these. You know, I mean, one of the things that I was just thinking about the visibility piece. We just got a grant for Beaver Creek Road from Warner Milne to Maple Lane to do signal improvements, including controllers and fiber connectivity and the yellow backer plate and you know, $1 million worth of improvements that it's going to feel. And then with the Malala Avenue piece, all of a sudden we're going to have all these signals that are they're gonna look similar because they're all going to be new. And so doing upgrades to this one just for that purpose alone and consistency. Obviously, you know, we've got others, but you know, trying to work our way through that, this one kind of made sense to me. I hadn't really thought of the removal piece. And you know, I get a little worried about the community kind of feedback on that, because I think folks that are really keen to the numbers get it a little bit more, but there's that emotional feeling about removal of a crosswalk as well. And I would want to really kind of consider that.
It also takes three signal changes to get across the intersection instead of one.
Yeah. And, you know, when I think about as you come down Malala Avenue, there's a mid-block crosswalk up by Tacho's, and then there's no crossing opportunity until you get to this intersection as you're going down the hill. So it's...
And coming the other way, it's Eastham School and 2 or 3 unsignalized half intersections coming up Roosevelt and I can't think of Pierce, I think, where it only comes in from one side, the side street does.
So, I mean, I think where we were headed was we wanted to give you an update. We were, in fact, part of me was thinking that we'd already kind of given the county some direction on this because a lot of it will be county improvement work. So we were going to move forward with some of these improvements, and I'm not hearing huge objections to it. I think I think I'm in a little bit of agreement in addition to the other concerns that I had about removal, which is, you know, adding signage, removing the ped heads. I don't know if you guys would have an opinion on that as well, but it would probably be more along the lines of subjective kind of decision making as opposed to science on that one, right? So
yeah, every community is different.
Potentially remove, you know, the CRF is showing the drop-in is pretty significant. Doing those top 2 items for a pretty inexpensive cost seems to take care of the majority of the problem too.
Yeah.
Maybe do that first, and then if there's still reoccurring issues, maybe bring up the removal at a later date.
So, wanted to present it. We're planning to move forward with most of them, but we haven't actually, Vance and I haven't ever, you know, what items aren't we going to do other than the curb extension? I wasn't in love with that one at all, just because it's construction capital that obviously we need to make our dollars, you know, spread. This is an unbudgeted project as well, so we're trying to, you know, when you ask questions about Holcomb, for instance, and other places like that, knowing that these things are in the works has been hard on, you know, our decision making with regard to how do we, at least during this 2-year biennium, spread that money around.
John?
So
Could the curb extension be tied into some future redevelopment work of White's Market?
Yeah.
And potentially, Mr. Atkinson mentioned this, I do have some experience with plastic, they're sort of domed curb that you can install with delineators that, although
A
in
fake
this case
extension.
with the ramp there, it would might be a little wonky trying to construct that. It's possible. It's something we could look at. That would be much more inexpensive than demoing a ADA ramp and pouring new. So there could be an option there on the curb extension. However, in talking with Lacey, we can do one thing that there's many of the recommendations that are very appealing to me, one of which I really think will help will be removing the 2 parking spots on Pearl and realigning that striping. So the motorists are sort of getting a little more squared up at each other, have a little bit of visibility, and we can do that without doing the curb extension.
Right.
So if the DCAS is saying the split phasing and leading pedestrian interval solves pretty much everything, why would you do any other things?
There's,
Well,
yeah.
I mean,
Like, yes, you're making things better and better, but will that, question is, will all those things still, or will they result in 100% reduction in potential
And
crash?
you can never guarantee 100%
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
people are,
So it's like, why would you?
I think the realignment that Vance is talking about, those 2 parking spots are causing an issue for operations anyways.
Yeah,
So you're going to have to do something, whether it's changing the type of detection and having video detection instead of the loop detectors, or removing those parking spaces. And once you remove those parking spaces, it's a pretty inexpensive fix to just realign the center line of that roadway to help. So yeah, it's not something that we necessarily can quantify and say now it's 99.25% reduction. But if you have to do something there anyways for the signal operations, then it's not a big add.
Lacey, I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
On the convert the acorn lighting to luminaire, the 20-30K, is that thinking new poles?
I would have to double check, because there is 2 options. There's the new poles, but I think that would be a lot higher of a cost. I believe this is, there's kind of like a clamp-on luminaire to where you can use the same pole, remove the acorn lights on top, and add the luminaire pole onto it.
Or leave the acorn and just put the clamp-on and run both of them.
Doesn't work that way, unfortunately, on the acorns.
Oh, I think it could.
again, I think, we are going to have to value engineer some of this. I mean, but I like the idea of getting it, fiber connected. That's an important piece for programming. And I like the idea of just some of the lower cost signage and, moving that no turn on red sign up. I can't tell you how long, I don't remember when we put that in, but I think it was pretty early in the development of that intersection, which was early 2000s. And so
it could have been 20 years ago for all I know.
It's never been that effective. And so that one I like too.
So anyway, thank you. I think we need to move along.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Mr.
you, Lacey.
Chair, I'm going to have to excuse myself because my hearing aids have gone.
Oh, no.
The batteries have died, and without them, I'm deaf as a post.
Then I would suggest going and getting some new batteries and having a good evening.
Well, yeah, I couldn't hear what you said. I'm sorry, but, there's no sense in, I couldn't hear half of that anyway. Unless somebody's got some number 312 batteries handy, I'm out of here.
Good night. Mine are at home. Okay. The next item is the Barlow Road speed hump request, and I assume, John, that you're going to be waiting on this?
Right. So we haven't had one of these in quite some time. I don't think we've had one when I've been staffing the Transportation Advisory Committee.
I don't remember one coming from the neighborhood in my time with the city.
Right. So That's not a bad thing. I'm thinking that's a good thing. I just, process-wise, we wanted to kind of make sure that the Transportation Advisory Committee had a chance to look at this. I think, are you the applicant? Okay, so make sure the applicant had a chance to kind of talk through it. And so as you recall, the city has a speed hump policy, and
Greg, would you like to come up to the mic and be able to be participant here, please?
yeah, so the city has a speed hump policy, and this group of neighbors has followed that. And I think the discussion is, from my perspective, is a little bit more about, justification. Obviously, the speed hump question is pressing now because there's 98 new houses off of Barlow Road. And so those, that opening up Barlow Road is, means more traffic, and in some cases, there may be some speeding. My biggest concern with this one is just it doesn't, while we're seeing traffic that gets maybe a little over 25 miles an hour, not very much at all. So if you look at the traffic speed report, we don't necessarily have a speeding problem as much as we have a increased traffic problem up there.
We took that into consideration as well. I know that when you guys placed the trailer where it was placed, it's just as you start cresting the hill, if you're driving that way, you don't have that trailer there, people come up to that hill and then their engine catches up to their speed and they go flying by 30, 35 miles an hour. When that trailer was there, it did slow people down, but I don't think you guys want to leave that trailer there for years on end. Mm-hmm. So we figure that, we're outside all the time with the kids and seeing the cars just rip on by. And last year it was the contractors coming to work, but so we kind of thought, let's wait a year to see how the residences drive. And quite honestly, their friends and their residences do come by pretty fast, and we've had some altercations out there too. And it's not just the fact that, I've been there for 18 years now, and it's been a dead-end street now that's an opened-up street. And I get there's going to be traffic, but it's just, if we can solve this by putting in a speed hump to slow people down to the speed, the stop sign that got put in at Whitman Court and the 2 speed signs that you guys helped work with us to get installed, those have been thanked by the rest of the neighbors in Barlow, but they're all saying people are still flying through here. So we're thinking, it's going to be on our dime. We'll just flip the bill, and we've already raised almost all the funds. So,
has anybody from the committee gone out and looked at this? I have.
I'm very familiar with the area, yeah.
Okay.
Me too.
Yeah. And I imagine Bob is too.
Bob would have probably been pretty familiar. Is there a specifically proposed site or sites? Are we talking 1 speed hump, 2, 10?
It should be part of your packet, Ben.
Yeah, it is in the packet.
There's a diagram that.
Which, on the staff report or on?
On the staff, he's got it up over here.
There we go. We got
What
you.
is it?
Handmade note.
Oh, handmade one.
All right, I can see where it's at.
Yeah.
So it's just leading into the stop sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't,
Going uphill.
what I'm not sure is, if you've considered that. I mean, I had some comments on the location, that it's proposed, and wondering if there should be a different location for it. But, I'm curious if the committee has thought much about that.
Well, I went out and looked at it from both sides, and admittedly, it was not at any time when there was likely to be a speeding problem. But what I observed was that there's a vertical crest just by the corner where there's a difference in grade. So it's a steep ascending grade from Hill Holcomb on Barlow, and then it flattens out going on up the hill. And this is really close to the corner where I think the combination of the speed hump, the corner, and the vertical curve might be enough to overcome some vehicle dynamics. it just doesn't strike me as being quite the place I would have picked. I'm probably around the corner, farther down the hill a little bit, maybe.
So I think my opinion of where it's at right now, I think, and maybe the goal or the hope is, one, people that utilize that particular stretch, if they're not local, it slows them down. But two, I think it would maybe perhaps redirect them to continue up Holcomb and take a left directly into the new neighborhood, as opposed to using this as the pass-through. So I don't know if.
It would definitely help. But
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we know traffic's gonna still use that street.
And the diagram that is here, there's actually quite a bit more room between where that speed hump is placed and where the actual neighborhood, that's not drawn to scale. There's quite a bit more of an extension going to the right before you actually get up to the neighborhood.
Well, I think
There's one house, 1.5, or
Yeah.
it's right in front of the second to last house, and I'm the last house.
And then there's a new neighborhood, and you got their
two more homes.
backyards and those houses, then the stop sign up there. So there's actually a decent amount of room between that and that next intersection. It's a little squished.
Well, you have two houses in existing neighborhood that have driveways.
Yep. And then there would be one backyard.
And then there's a new
structure of the new house. You'd basically have three
or
house
two.
widths.
Actually, there would be two new driveways on the new neighborhood.
Yeah.
Correct.
So you're proposing it in between.
Right between the new neighborhood and the old, pretty much.
Actually, two houses before the new neighborhood. We kind of strategically looked at where it would be, where it wouldn't impede with the intersection of Whitman Court. And it would also encourage cars to slow down as they're coming down Barlow Drive and coming up to Whitman Court, because Whitman Court has a stop sign. But sometimes it just kind of helps slows them down, so they will start speeding up and heading to work or heading out the door, heading that way.
Okay.
But where it was situated, where we're picking up, this is not exactly to scale.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not an artist here. I do manual labor. But it is pretty much the two driveways before the new development, which are two more houses. One they just moved in, so they're actually not signed on the petition because they weren't even there when the petition got mailed in. Then there's another house that's in the process of being built right now. So there's two homes after my house, which is that 16253 on that diagram there.
And the people who live in those houses are okay with it because they'd be slowing down to get into their driveways anyway. So everybody that's directly there is signed on.
And if you were to go out there and look at them, I should have brought pictures, and I didn't have a presentation, a slideshow for you guys, but if you go out there, it would make sense and room for where it was going to be at. We're like, okay, well, let's put it over here, over there. No, it really needs to be over here. This is where it'd have to be to make it, appease to everybody. And where the traffic kind of speeds up through Barlow Drive, and as it hits that hill and comes up to Whitman Court, that's when they start just going faster and faster. And like I said, we got kids all around. Of course, the kids are being trained not to play in the street now that there's a dead end, but that was popular for playing area. But that area where we're proposing for that hump is aesthetically pleasing and also safe in traffic. We're taking all these things into consideration.
Am I correct that as far as the checklist is concerned of all the items that would need to be addressed, everything's checked off, signed off?
Yeah, in accordance with our policy, everything is there. My only point about the location is just, some people love speed bumps, other people hate them, right? And so you love them if they're slowing traffic in your neighborhood. If you have to go over them, well, I just thought, did you get it? Yeah, if we want to look specifically at the roadway, we can.
Over your ears.
Let me go ahead. If we need to, we can look at a Google.
Yeah, so that's
Street View.
So it's not up yet.
But my thought is moving it closer to Trail Drive. I don't know if the applicants would, if we found a better place there. For one, it would be right now as it's placed. If there's a speed bump and there's a spike bump, and I just want to make sure it is not perceived as a spike bump, in that we've got a brand new neighborhood and we're putting it right there to necessarily force them to go a different way. it seems like if you moved it a little bit further down the hill on Barlow Drive, it would pick up that many more potential speeders. And I like to think that folks in their own neighborhood don't speed, but that's not true.
No.
So just the idea, I don't know if the you know, the folks that signed for this would support the idea if we went out and looked at, you know, locations really between Trail Drive and Earnhardt Avenue and spotted that in a slightly different location just to pick up as many potential speeders as possible.
Well, between Whitman Court and Trail, it's a hill. You can't put a speed
Yeah, I
bump
think
on
that's
there.
what he,
That's why we were.
you
kinda-
drive it, I drive it. So I think what he's saying is as you're coming up from Trail to his proposed site is fairly uphill. And then as you approach Whitman, it flattens out. So his experience is that that's where the accelerations are happening both directions. Is that?
It's mostly coming up the hill because
Coming up the hill.
of that hitting that hill. It's a pretty good incline.
And what I was trying to point out earlier, see where Earnhardt is?
Yeah.
So the earlier drawing,
This is.
there's actually quite a bit more
Yeah.
space there than
Yeah.
what the earlier
Well,
drawing.
the other thing is, it's a curved street, so you don't get
I
as much
think that's the.
speed on the curve, on that lower portion.
Correct.
And you, because it's uphill, it obviously blocks your view
no
in the
street view
direction
there.
you're curving, so the curve and the natural, way the streetscape is, you have to go slow there anyway. It gets cleared out when you get flat up there into the new addition where Craig was proposing it.
I can't get street view, but you're saying this is steep.
Yeah, I don't think we have.
That's steep, that's going up to Whitman.
Yeah, it's
So
pretty steep
it
right
only
there.
starts to really flatten out after you pass Whitman.
Okay.
So I think where he's proposing it is like the L of the Barlow. And then that gives you enough before you get into
So
the next
right-
neighborhood.
right there is
Yeah.
where we're
Oh,
proposing.
so more on the S, okay.
Away from the intersection, so that's not like
So it's
giving a
not
hump right at
affecting
the
those.
intersection.
Because there is a new stop sign at Whitman and Barlow.
Yeah.
So that's slowing that traffic on the egress.
Yes.
So I'm curious, so currently there's really no speeding in this neighborhood? It's just that now because of these houses, all of a sudden there's speeding going through?
Correct, because it was a dead end. It was to Whitman Court and cop office.
So where the-
But I'm just saying down lower, like on the Barlow, let's say by Josie or,
Oh, they're speeding down there as well. And we have a lady here who has a daycare center, a daycare in her house, what do you call that? And she walks the kids to the neighborhood all the time. It's their daily walk with the kids to get them out. And they said she's willing. She lives off of corner of Trail and Oyer, a little bit above that the picture there, and she's willing to put in money to help out because she's walking the kids everywhere. And we would love to get another one in there, but I'm not flipping the bill for further down. I haven't talked to those neighbors down there, but I know one of the guys owns 2 houses, so he'd be on the hook for a substantial chunk of that. And one of the houses is for sale, and the other one, somebody just moved in. So it's like all these new neighbors, all of a sudden they want to put out several $1,000s for a home.
Is the neighborhood active up there?
As in,
And was a neighborhood group like Park Place?
This is Park Place.
it is
They are
I think that's where it initiated is this.
Okay, then, well, my question is saying, I've recently been moving around the greater area, and one of the places I've noticed is Milwaukee has, where I lived 50 years ago, has installed some speed humps on a road that is a unofficial connector between the Lake Road and on over the top of the hill to the shopping center. And to be effective, it seems like you need one about every 600 to 800 feet on a road like this with the type of traffic that it looks like the east we're talking about. So maybe having a second one somewhere down around Josie Court in conjunction with this, but if it was to be moved ahead, it would seem like it would be more reasonable to do both of them at the same time rather than doing one and then coming back and having to go through the process again and doing the other one. So I'm kind of wondering if there's any support can be found for doing 2 of them before moving ahead.
So I think the one main issue with that is it sounds like you guys have come up with the money to do one.
Yeah,
Well,
but
yeah.
you
So they're
need a
willing to
handful
foot
of
the
houses,
bill.
yeah.
Well, they're willing to foot the bill, but they'd be.
Are they willing to fit the bill for two?
No,
yeah,
I'm not
that's-
asking
okay,
that.
okay.
I'm saying,
And they,
can support be generated down there for a second one so that you can put two of them in at the same time rather than
Is there a
doing-
real cost effectiveness to doing two at once?
A little bit.
A little bit?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
Mobilization
I was impressed with, you guys got
Well, I
pretty
am.
low
Brian.
pricing for
I am too, but part of this is also saying you put the speed hump in, but there's also a certain amount of pavement striping and possibly some signage that goes along with the speed hump.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's more to it than just putting some asphalt out there.
Yeah, we've gotten quotes
And-
for the whole process
Right.
from the thermoplastics
And-
to the signage and.
And I don't want to unduly hold that up, but
I agree, if you have there's no shortage of concerned citizens when it comes to speeding, whether it be in the neighborhoods or, as we heard tonight, out on Holcomb.
right.
Yeah, the previous speaker,
Yeah.
we're just talking just down around
Right.
the corner he's talking
Yeah.
about.
I think this is a pretty huge leap for a small group of folks who, we've not, like I said, had one of these. So there's hats off to you for,
Yeah, when your
getting that
emails to
together.
us and phone calls have been that people tend to back off once they find the ticket price on that, and we found a contractor, at least one so far. We got two more bids coming through. We got two bids already, and one was fair, and another one was still cheaper what the city was quoting us for installing one. But we are making it happen if we can make it happen.
My point would be, I think you kind of almost have to benefit the community activism on the part of the neighborhood association coming up with it. And, if the lower half comes up with the same thing later down the road, acquiesce to them. But I think supporting what the citizens have reached out and said they want.
Okay.
Can I say one
Any,
thing?
any further questions?
Oh, yes.
I was going to mention on the diagram there, from Holcomb up past Josie Court is a hill as well. It barely planes off and goes back to that hill again, so there's not much of a feasibility, I believe, for a hump on a hill or a quick plateau of a hill, because adding more hill to the hill. So.
I have one thing. I was reading the fire district, their letter, and it was asking about the access to homes. Is there space in the speed hump for the trucks to get through, fire trucks?
Oh, the speed hump doesn't slow down fire trucks. It doesn't even slow down Lexus SUVs much.
I mean, do they have cutouts?
That's what I'm wondering, because I looked at the design, it looked like it had cutouts. It looks like on the sides it does, but not in the middle. So
Going up that hill, even a fire engine's only going to do 20 mile an hour.
Yeah. We don't, so our standard isn't the pillow, which is a speed pillow is what you're talking about, really, where a large truck like that can span either side of that. Based on the profile, it's a speed bump, but it's not as some agencies build, which are much more dramatic.
Okay.
And so, in this case, that shouldn't be a problem.
Is there a motion to support?
I would move to support it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Looks like the board
Right.
is in agreement.
So, yeah, we'll have to.
The process, which is in their packet.
I'm sorry, the committee is in agreement.
Final approval after the TAC recommends it.
You want to repeat that since you read?
Yeah, sorry, folks. So the process, excuse me while I find it real quick so I don't misspeak, but this meeting tonight, you coming to speak on behalf of you and your neighbors, the TAC committee reviewing the application. The city engineer or designee will present his or her findings to the TAC, who will then make recommendations to the city engineer, Dana Webb, who will then make the final eligibility determination. So,
City engineer.
take it.
City engineer.
City engineer, what did I say?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's one more step with now that we have the tax approval, John and or myself will approach the city engineer, have a discussion with her, and if she gives us a green light, we'll give you the green light.
Okay.
And if I could say one more thing, the contractors that you have, or whoever you pick for contractor, this all goes through and you end up hiring somebody. There is a detail, a pretty specific detail on the parabolic crown of the speed cushion. And having hand raked speed humps before myself, they are not easy to do. And if they are not done properly, they can really, really be a bad situation for the motorists.
Okay.
I literally have experienced it. So we've had, in a previous city, not Oregon City, city of Tigard, they do lots of speed humps. They'd had a contractor do one, and it had to be removed within a week because the parabolas on each side were too steep and cars were catching air and getting damaged. So my point is, I can't stress enough, please make sure whatever contractor you hire is absolutely dead on with the percentages and the measurements that are in the specifications.
Okay.
Okay?
Is there a final inspection from the city once it's installed, or is it?
Yeah, we'll go through the process a little bit, because we typically would have like a little pre-con.
It's a city right away. I'm sure you would want to.
Yeah, we're gonna have a, yeah, we're not just gonna, it's not, yeah, but we'll.
Don't cut the check till it's all okay.
Yeah,
In other words.
we'll sit down with you. Like I said, we haven't done one of these in a while, so we probably need to rebuild that process.
Okay.
But we're not here to, get in the way of that. It's mostly just making sure it's done right.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Are you Craig?
Right.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Gentlemen, we have about 10 minutes. Can we get through some of this?
Yeah, there's not much to talk about on the TriMet. We put that in the packet because they announced it without really reading it. There's not very much associated with Oregon City, and there's nothing associated with Oregon City in that TriMet service pack. But in talking to Dana, there was some discussion about extending more TriMet bus routes out to the high school. And really that won't happen until we complete Myers Road, which is really scheduled for the end of 2021. So we'll revisit TriMet the next round of, because we were on the fence about whether or not we should include it in their service adjustments because they're advertising it now. It's still got some time before implementation, but we still want to make sure we're well down the road with.
I think you could use the existing hunk of Myers Road through the high school and then hop over to Glen Oak and use that until Myers Road is finished.
You're kidding, right?
No, I'm not.
Did you not sit and hear the folks on, well, I guess you probably didn't. I went to the Gaffney Lane Neighborhood Association.
Well, right, but.
And the folks out there off Caulfield would probably want to hang you for that. So
You at least got signals at Glen Oak to get the traffic onto 213.
There's times when they're very difficult.
Anyway, moving on.
The TAC vacancy, well, by the way, congratulations. We got a pretty good turnout tonight, so thank you for that. But what's the...
So December 31st, we are going to have 3 openings. We've had 3 people apply. Sedamir, or Chedamir, thank you. Bob has reapplied, and then we have another person that's reapplied that is not currently on the committee. So what I had asked Katie Riggs was, is it okay if you all recommend that we just reappoint the 2 that are already on the committee so we don't have to run them through interviews again, like we did to Henry. But that's just because it was you. And then, proceed on. We've still only had one person apply. It's been open since, I think, August or the beginning of September. We can bring that person in, interview them, and decide from there what we want to do.
We also had to interview John last time, too.
It was the time before that.
Yeah, time before that. This was a past mayor's desire to do it that way.
The only thing with having Chedamir and Bob reassigned again is that the vacant position is a neighborhood association position. And so I don't know if any of you are currently on a neighborhood association. You don't get to raise your hand because you're a Chamber of Commerce.
Is Bob on a neighborhood association?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think he is.
He's on Park Place.
So could you slide him
But
into
his
that
question
slot?
is,
He'll already be, we still need one more.
Oh, we still need one
Because
more.
Ed was a neighborhood association and he's the other member that's leaving. And so are you on a neighborhood association?
Do you mean like an appointed position at neighborhood association?
officer.
Yeah.
I was asked to be, but I was too busy to say yes.
Okay, well,
Does it say officer or does it say an appointee from a neighborhood?
I think it's an appointee. It doesn't have to be an officer per se.
I mean, I attend the meetings every
Neighborhood
month.
association.
it's composed of two members of a city-recognized neighborhood association, one active member of the OC Chamber of Commerce, and the remaining members being appointed at large. So two members, I guess, I don't know if that's an
So member and not officer?
Right.
Yeah, a member.
Because I'm a member of I go to monthly meetings for my neighborhood.
Gaffney
Okay.
Lane, right?
So you could be designated by them to be
And then
rep.
All right, so then the third person, as long as he interviews and you all like him, then.
You mind reaching out to Amy, Gaffney Lane, right?
Yeah. I email her once in a while, so I can email her.
Yeah.
Have her officially appoint you as their representative.
Right, and we need to do the same with Bob. That's perfect.
Okay,
I mean,
so you all are good.
perfect from my perspective. You're the ones that have to tell us.
And I personally have been in favor of the reappointment of existing members rather than go through the interview process again. It seems sort of silly to interview people you already know. But again, that's a committee thing and not my decision. So
I'd make a motion that the existing members who applied for another term, we just appoint them instead of interview them.
I second that motion.
been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
You know, you didn't even ask for discussion.
I know I didn't ask for discussion. We already had it.
So we'll pass that on, and I think the mayor still will want to appoint, but yeah. Good.
And I'll follow up with Amy about my thing with neighborhood association. Yeah.
And do you want to send an email to Bob on that to
Yeah.
clarify his point too?
Yeah.
The winter response map?
So that was just to get the map out in front of you and our actual policy. The policy is huge, and I didn't want to go through the whole thing anyways. Just if anybody had any questions and then about anything that they may have read in there. And
Basically, you're doing main roads only.
yeah. And in a big event, that's all we have time to do. Like when it's first coming down, we might only be plowing the priority 1 red streets. That might be all we have time to do. Just get the hills sanded, plowed, and then once an event starts to slow down, then we move on to the 2s, 3s, and then if there's time, we'll move to the neighborhoods. But a lot of times, there's not even time to get to the neighborhoods.
I think they put the written policy together. I think I saw 2014. So if you got 3 years under your belt, maybe more, and have you been able to tweak it if you needed to and make some change in the policy? I don't know, 3 inches of snow is what kicks in the removal, right?
It says 3 inches. That's just because we don't have a bare pavement policy, but we're out plowing before we get 3 inches of snow on the ground. The first plows go out before 3 inches, and then
This, I'm looking at page 4 there. In bold, plowing activities will not begin until roads have accumulated 3 inches or more of snow.
yeah, that's what the policy says. But we can go out before that.
They're trying to preempt the.
Yeah.
It's a bigger.
It's generally 3 inches somewhere.
Well,
Yeah, and there could be 3 inches up on
Yeah,
Beaver
Barlow.
Creek and nothing down at the river, down on Main Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, I personally have seen 99 free and snow on top of the cliff at the elevator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we
the
were
other
having
thing
that,
is,
that problem last year. We were getting snow and ice on Beaver Creek and nothing down on Main Street.
I mean, important for this committee to know is that on the same page, streets not on the snow route list, I think it was a priority 1, 2, 3, whatever it is, will not be maintained under snow and ice control operations.
Yes.
So you actually, so if you're sitting on a residential street with 8 inches of snow, you may just be sitting there. The city doesn't have a plan to come and take that off. Now, it may well do that at some point, but that's not until you got all the other priorities taken care of.
Correct.
Yeah. And even that, I mean, we have tried, there was that year of multiple ice events and snow events, and we really struggled with that. We did go into the neighborhoods, and then we had problems with berming against driveways, and we got just as many complaints from that. So, I mean, there's definitely some personal responsibility, because, I mean, curbs, you know, we just, you end up tearing up more stuff than you're preventing. And some of those streets, Oak Tree Terrace is a good one. Good. I can't remember if Oak Tree's on our list now, but you know, just putting a sanding truck on some of our steeper streets is probably pretty problematic. So, you know, I think unless we have a pump station or a facility that we need to get to, we're probably going to stay out of most of those neighborhood streets, even if it's got 8 or 10 inches of accumulation.
Do you get any demand to do sidewalks? Like, say you got new sidewalks on 15th coming down that steep hill. I don't know if any houses face that or not, but.
Yeah, we don't have the equipment or manpower to deal with it.
So you don't do any of that.
Is the city going to start using salt?
No. No, salt, we don't have a building to house salt. You have to keep salt dry. We just don't have a physical place to house the salt. We'd end up with a giant brick of salt that would be useless for us. And then we use the MAG for pre-treating roads before an event, maybe mainly for ice. Salt isn't going to do that for pre-treating. It's all going to end up on the shoulder when the cars blow it off. So,
and salt's really nasty stuff.
Salt's hard on your
it's hard on the road,
sidewalk, your concrete, all that stuff. You know, ODOT's starting to use salt, but they're using it in places where there's not a lot of concrete around, there's not a lot of curbs around, and where they're using it, there's snow there a lot.
It also takes different sanding equipment. Yes, you could put salt through our older sanders, but they're not stainless steel, so you'd get one winter out of them. If you look at any agencies that are using salt on a regular basis, the sanders that they put in the back of the dump trucks are made out of stainless steel primarily.
What is this winter SOG nonsense?
That's what you just, that's what you're reading from. Yeah, that's what you're reading from.
Policy.
You should be able to open the rip, and it's like 20 pages long.
Okay. Just asking.
Opening up.
Standard operating supplement.
Documents.
SOG, standard operating.
That's just what we've been talking about.
Describes the inches and all that stuff.
All righty. Communications. Don't know of any communications.
I have one actually about the transportation survey for downtown that I sent out, I think it's last Sunday or Saturday. I think it's open up for another week. So I just wanted to make you aware of it and let your friends know to take that survey. We're trying to get as many responses discussing parking and transportation in downtown. So, yeah.
I filled it out.
Thank you.
I know Vance was going to talk about.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, just one small thing. Just as a FYI, I think it was the 9th, Saturday the 9th, at about 2 in the morning, a intoxicated driver lost control of his vehicle on 7th, approaching Singer Hill.
Is that why the fence is out?
That is why the fence is out, yes.
Okay.
The vehicle actually started rolling before they got to the stone rail. So vehicle loses control, it's rolling, rolls over the top railing, which destroyed a few of the columns and some of the railing work, landed upside down, kind of at where the tunnel exits right there, where the stairs begin, ended up upside down there, partially in the creek. Towing company was able to crane that vehicle out and get it out of there. I was able to get a hold of Pioneer Waterproofing, which is the company that for many years has done the stone repair work for the city. I got a hold of them that weekend and got an estimate on Monday. They've already started work. Estimated time is 2+ weeks to perform the work, and then they'll be out of there. And the only good news I have is, according to the police report, the motorist has insurance.
Funny, he was injured, but
He was injured, but not life-threatening.
good.
Yep.
And John, you said that you have update about Beaver Creek Road, I believe?
Well, I just want to mention, so the city commission had a work session on Beaver Creek Road, and there's been some discussion about the adopted concept plan that was adopted, I want to say over 10 years ago, was for a 3-lane road section. And there's been a fair amount of community discussion about that when they talked about zoning in the Beaver Creek area. A lot of discussion about it, and the commission felt pretty strongly that they wanted to have a conversation about that. So we brought to them both the conversation about, I think there was 4 questions, but one of them was 3 lanes versus 5 lanes. The other one was standard signalized intersections versus roundabouts. There's a element of the transportation system plan that counts on a through connection from Beaver Creek over to Holly Lane at Maple Lane. And one other question, I can't remember what it was, but those are the biggies. And so the commission, we shared with them some graphics. If you're interested in that, you should go look at the work session agenda. It'll all be on there, including we had our in-house staff kind of lay on some roundabouts to show kind of how many, existing homes those roundabouts would impact, just because they have such a kind of a wide footprint. And they're also, depending on how we build that project, they're more challenging to build because you've got, you can't necessarily require a developer to build a quarter of a roundabout, right? You gotta build the whole thing. So, and the cost implications, especially if you're buying houses and moving people out of them so that you can demo the house and build a roundabout there. So, the commission decided on a 5-lane section between really 213 and Myers Road, so that Myers Road intersection. And they also went with the option of signalized intersections at 4 intersections, which is Claremont, Loader Road, Myers Road, and Glen Oak Road. So, and they also felt like continued pursuit of a connection of the Beaver Creek Road area with a kind of a back connection to Holly Lane was an important element to that. So that's kind of how we're moving forward, at least with the adoption of the code changes that go along with rezoning of that property. So that was kind of an unplanned element of the code changes that they got a grant to do code changes and adopt zoning for that area. And really out of that spiraled this idea of, well, we need to know what Beaver Creek is really going to look like. And I'm glad that we did, because it helps us if we get a development application tomorrow, we'll know a little bit more about what we're going to ask that developer to build. And so.
So just to be clear, you're going to have 5 lanes between 213 and where Myers Road is, when it's all done, comes out on the other side.
Yeah, right there at the high school. There's an existing intersection there now anyway. So, and then after that intersection between.
So I'm having a hard time remembering in my head what that Beaver Creek concept plan looks like. And I remember on the north end, you've got light industrial, and then it transitions into, different types of housing as it goes further south. I know it's not our place to say, but boy, if you're trying to encourage more foot traffic, putting a 5-lane road there really doesn't seem to be a bright idea. I mean, as someone who grew up on Division Avenue, let me tell you, people don't cross that thing on foot unless they take their life in their hands.
Or they're drunk.
I share the same concern as someone who walks in the area. I guess I didn't follow this project as closely as I should have, but I heard a discussion about 3-lane versus 5-lane. So now I know it looks like it's finalized. I just wish I took the survey and expressed my concern about safety with 5-lane, and it seems like they went ahead and did it, but I get to deal with repercussions because I work at the college and promote active transportation up there. So it's going to create more difficulty for my work up there. So just want to share that point of view. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all good information. I think that's fairly representative of what we saw in the questionnaire, which was a split on 5 lanes versus 3 lanes. I think our challenge is going to be how to create a roadway section that moves traffic and also safely moves bikes and peds. And, I think.
Good luck with that.
Wider section. So, things like signal timing and signal programming, kind of things that we heard about Pearl Street would apply to this location as well.
Is there funding for the 5-lane section, or is that just a design that they're going forward with?
No, there's not funding for the 5-lane section. Not all of it anyway. I mean, the TSP has intersection projects at Loader and Glen Oak. So there's some. In the whole concept area, there's about $50 million worth of transportation projects listed, and that would be SDC fundable. Could you scale back on some of those projects and throw a little more money towards Beaver Creek Road? That's kind of what we're asked to kind of bring back to them as funding strategy.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick follow-up question. When Bob made a presentation, there were updates on traffic, Councilor, what ODOT's doing and so on. But I don't know if we're all on the same page in terms of what's next. You sound like you gave 1 or 2 updates, but the rest of it's not going to happen. I don't know if it's that flat out or not, because you can't change budget priorities on the 5-year.
I think we've heard loud and clear from this committee. I think the motion that you made last month was meaningful, and we heard it. It is kind of back to, just because a motion was made doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to find a new pot of funding that we can move forward with building the crosswalks that Bob's asking for on Holcomb.
But then, that's all I'm saying, then maybe next
budget
meeting, you could put a period at the end and said, we did these 2 things.
Okay.
There may be something in the offing, but there's nothing coming from the budget. There's nothing happening for another 2 or 3 years until work on the capital improvement plan for that report.
Yeah, I think that's a great recommendation. We'll try to emphasize what we think we can do and when. I mean, Holcomb is a priority for us from a grant perspective because there is probably some safe routes to school options. There's also some development potential along there. So trying to package that in a way, but some of those don't have guarantees in terms of timelines, but it's definitely a focus area for us. I think once we get through Myers and Malala and some of these Beaver Creek improvements.
Yeah.
I'm curious, I mean, you guys are getting additional monies from the vehicle registration, and a lot of that money is for safety. Why can't some of that money be used on Holcomb?
I think it can. I think you're right, Senator Mayor, that packaging, one of the things that really even the city commissioners, Rachel Lyle Smith in particular, feels like, she hears regularly from the community wanting those rapid flashing beacons. They don't always necessarily know how much they are, and they ask for them pretty much everywhere. But putting together a decent sized package that's got, I think in the TSP, I can't remember how many of them that there are, but there's like 20 of them. So maybe we have a project that incorporates all of those using vehicle registration fees.
I have a request myself for some clarification on signage. I've been noticing that the school speed sign, 20-mile-an-hour speed signs, there's 3 different writers underneath, and whether or not you need to do 20 miles an hour depends upon what those writers say. And it's, number one, they're too small to see until you're past them. And number 2, is there any rhyme or reason as to which ones go where? The one that says 20 mile an hour when flashing is self-evident, but the other two, sometimes it says when children are present, sometimes it says 5 to 7 or 7 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
And is there any rhyme or reason why there's one and not the other? And I don't think it needs to be discussed tonight. I just think it should come back, and perhaps that information could be put into that document that we put together a couple of years ago about what's important. You know what I'm talking about, John?
Yeah, and there's definitely rhyme and reason associated
well, I'm sure there is, but I haven't been able to figure it out.
So that can be an item kind of like what we did with the snow and ice program, where we share some of that with you and talk about, the school zones that we have. I mean, the Holcomb one's kind of hard to understand.
Right.
So maybe that's one that we bring back as well. But yeah, there's definitely rhyme and reason to that.
Well, I'm sure there is.
And I know it's been a few years, but I remember, I think it was even before you were here, Jason, we did a pretty heavy audit of our school zones, because not only was text different, each sign was different, and we were inconsistent, and the placement of our school zone signage, there's specific direction on how far before, based on the speed, those kind of things. So I think we're pretty tight on that, but over the years that may have changed. Maybe there's some minor
Well, I'm also thinking that document that I sort of helped put together 3 years ago that we got on the website about what we're supposed to maintain, that might be a good place to put whatever it is and condense it and put it into that, so other people might be able to understand what it's all about too. Hopefully. If there's anything else?
I have an agenda topic for next or future meeting. I've been working with other committees on the House Bill 2001 on the model code that the state is writing for that. And I don't know how much involvement the committee wants to have on that. I personally would like to have the city get more involved with how the model code is written on a state level, which impacts the city. Because by end of next year is when the state's going to be telling all these cities across the state to adopt this housing code, and it impacts transportation from what we discussed in the past. So I'd like to have more discussion on that and how much engagement we want to have on the model code for the state. I don't know I'm not looking for a motion. I'm just saying that's something I'd like to have on the agenda next month or so, because they're writing that model code over the next 10 months, I believe. So sometime in 2020, the state, it's called DLCD, is going to be sending out this model code to all the cities across the state. And I personally would like to have that more transit involved with that model code.
What kind of code?
It's basically the housing code. So
it was measure passed by the legislature.
Yeah, House Bill 2001. The state's working on giving an example of model code the cities can adopt. And they don't have to adopt it, but if they want to take the easy way to just say, hey, we'll adopt whatever the state gives us, then that's what the state is doing. And the city will have an option over the next year or two to decide what path they take. But the model code, basically in my mind, by getting input on that, it impacts all cities across the state. So if we can, however we want to proceed with that, we'll have an impact statewide. So that's my suggestion there.
Anything else? We are stand adjourned.